Minimum distance to announce your intentions. It depends on where you are. If you're in Class B, then you want to start communicating as you're getting to the outside ring of that upside down wedding cake. Historically, you're going to want to get ATIS, which is information that tells you everything about the airport as far as altitude, landing runways, any hazards that you can get. Yeah, it can be 5 or 10 miles depending on where that ring is that you see. You don't want to enter into those areas with the rings, and we know that there's fractions out there in each one of the rings that tell you the bottom and the top of it. So if you're staying under it, then you're actually okay, but it's just better to go ahead and communicate as soon as you reach the outside ring, which could be as far away as 30 miles depending on the airport you're landing at. Any other questions? Yes, there's no difference between aircraft. If you're flying into Class B, you're going to be required to have Mode C and radio communication. It doesn't matter what you're flying, a pup tent. If you're flying in that airspace, then you got to meet the standards. Typically, ultralights don't go into Class B airspace. Part 103 does have some pretty major restrictions, so for those, it's really ultralights are for fun fly, and they don't really belong in Class D or C or E. Yeah, and there'll be military training routes and MOAs out there that you would never see unless you had a sectional chart. So they can fly at low altitudes. You'll see up in Wyoming, for instance, you'll see lots of B-1 bombers flying around, or B-2s. And they'll be at very low altitudes, even B-52s that are using terrain following, because that's how they get into areas to do their bombing runs. They practice all over the United States. So you get up in Wyoming and parts of Colorado and some of those areas, and you're going to see those real fast movers that are flying at very low altitudes. Well, search and rescue missions is kind of a different animal. Search and rescue, you're flying slower, and typically about 500 feet AGL. So you're trying to find somebody, which is like looking for a needle in a haystack, as Josephine can tell you. Trying to find somebody in a small boat, or trying to find an airplane from the air, and I have experience from that, being in Civil Air Patrol and doing search and rescue missions. Actual downed aircraft are almost impossible to see. It's usually by accident. A lot of times something that looks like somebody threw a bunch of trash out on the ground is a downed aircraft, and it can have a debris field of a mile or so, depending on the speed and direction of flight. Typically where you find people is just on the other side of ridges. They'll hit the ridge and then pop over on the other side, and that's where the accident site will be. And unfortunately, even with an ELT on board, which we're all... He just sets the forest on fire, yeah. Yeah, we fly, in Civil Air Patrol, we fly a grid pattern. Each aircraft is assigned a grid, or a number of grids, and we stay within our areas as a coordinated effort so that everybody covers their area, and then they can move on to the next one. So if you're out there and you're alive, and you know, you can you know, set a fire or shoot off some fireworks or lights or something to get attention, they'll fly close enough where they'll be able to get you. Yeah, and we're using in the aircraft, we have locators tuned to emergency frequency. So we can usually find people. There's lots of new things out there, like something called Spot, which actually tracks you within 3 meters. You can carry that separate from your ELT. Yeah, it's funny because airports like North Las Vegas, for instance, they're you know, North Las Vegas is number 7th busiest airport in the United States. Okay, any other questions on airspace?